How can you turn this into this with essentially no artistic talent, or at least very little artistic talent? If you've written sci-fi or fantasy or really any kind of genre where you're doing a lot of world building, you've probably heard this quote from Tolkien. "I wisely started with a map and made the story fit. The other way about lands one in confusion and impossibilities, and in any case, it's weary work to compose a map from a story." But really, it comes down to world building and how a map can help you. It kind of sounds great, right? You get this beautiful map that you can really build around, that you can visualize, and you see it in your head. Do you see your map in your head right now? The map for your story? The problem is, if you're like me and you lack some of that writing talent, it turns out like this. Enter Inkarnate, a browser-based program to create your own maps. Today, we're going to go into why I think it can either be a tremendous assistant for your writing and even a way to upgrade your published books, or a gigantic time suck. And no, this is certainly not sponsored. On the left, you have a map I commissioned through Fiverr from an original sketch that I worked on a little bit in Photoshop, just to make it a little bit closer to what I had personally wanted. This has been the map in my books for over 4 years. On the right, that is a map I'm currently working on in Inkarnate. I like this program, but I gotta talk about some of the issues first. This program is browser-based, meaning it is tied to whatever browser you're using and the issues that come with those browsers. It lagged a lot for me, honestly, and yes, I will say that it tells you to turn on hardware acceleration, but I personally don't because of issues that has with streaming and with, things like Discord. If they move to a standalone app like other writing programs such as Campfire have done, which originally started out as a Steam app, moved to browser-based, and then added desktop and mobile apps, well, it allows you to be able to harness the actual computer directly, which would take care of a lot of the lag issues potentially, but also take care of one thing that I think is very, very vital, if not essential, to your enjoyment and the fulfillment you get with this particular app. And that is the ability to better use your drawing pads when you're actually working on your map. And I say that because while it is browser-based, you do get a lot of the functionality you would normally get. There are still some things like some certain buttons and things like that that will not work, and there didn't seem to be any way to change that in the browser. Can you use the map creator with a mouse and keyboard? Sure, but the experience will probably be more difficult unless you're just very good. I think this is where it comes down to what are you trying to do with the creator? Do you want to use it as a guide for your writing, just a visual aid for you and making it a little bit easier? Maybe a little better looking at than your scribbles that you're writing in your first book? Well, then you're probably going to be fine using a mouse and keyboard to rough out some geography to help you visualize your story and ground it in a realistic world. But I think this program really shines when you can make use of a drawing pad and devote time to it. If you're familiar with Photoshop or other drawing programs, it has a lot of similar features like layers, though they do seem a bit more limited. It has undo, brush sizes, and you can even blend if you get creative with the opacity sliders. Essentially, it works very well with a drawing pad because you can just kind of massage things in a way that you can't do as easily with a mouse and keyboard. But that's not why this program stands out, because all those things are already present in things like Photoshop. What makes this stand out is its stamps. Drawing landmasses saves a little time by creating coastlines, but the big thing here is when you can put entire mountain ranges in seconds, same with forests or cities, and make them actually look good. It also adds a uniform art style if you choose to stick with the same type of stamps, while also allowing you to add some differentiation if you want to. It is a very user-friendly way to essentially have your own custom brushes for map making in a thing like Photoshop that you may have cultivated over years, but instead they're just there for you. It has several built-in tools with like text with drop shadow and stroke that you can customize to your needs. Preset layers that essentially create masks for you, letting you easily add textures to your land and not your ocean. Filters that you can add on top to give your map an entirely different look. And path tools which help you create uniform paths for borders or roadways. and it's all easily undoable or deletable with their panels on the right or left. Honestly, it's just easy to use. You can get creating without needing to watch a YouTube tutorial, for example. When you hover over different things, it gives you little tooltips on the expected uses of each item, and it kind of just works. Recently used tabs allow you to quickly snap back to what you had been doing previously, so you can really just dig into the map making process. It makes it a lot of fun and makes it feel a bit less intimidating. That said, it can still be a dramatic time sink. To this point, I've only shown you one part of the map I've been creating. And part of that is because, well, this took me over an hour. Granted, while doing this, I was learning things like what keystrokes worked and what didn't, so there was a whole lot of tutorial and learning as I was going about it, but it's still a very time-consuming process if you want to do it well. It is still faster than making a map from scratch. I've done that with my most recent book and it took ages longer, and I still didn't complete it, and honestly, I think Inkarnate map will look better in the end. The alternative to this, if you don't want to make the map at all, of course, is a freelancer. You can get a freelancer or a professional to make maps for you. You'd be amazed at what some artists can do with a very simple sketch of yours. Just make sure if you plan to use it on your book, you get the commercial rights. But how much does Inkarnate cost? Well, there are two answers to this question. There is a free version and a version for a nominal fee, monthly or yearly. Do you want to use these maps in your books or sell them elsewhere as posters or other types of merchandise? If so, you're going to need to pay Inkarnate for the commercial rights. That is where the monthly fee or the yearly fee comes in, and that's going to be roughly about $5 to $25. If you don't and you just want the maps to be a guide for your writing, this program is actually free. Now, it should be noted that the free version does have some additional limits on it besides the commercial rights, so let's break down the additional differences. First, and perhaps the biggest one, is going to be map size and DPI. The free version is no slouch, but the paid version bumps your resolution from 2048 x 2048 pixels to 1896 by 1896 pixels, as well as upgrading your export DPI from 72 with the free version to 300 with the paid version. The asset library will also be larger on the paid version. So these things like trees and mountains are expanded on in the paid library with more options to pick from. But speaking of assets, in the paid version of Inkarnate, you can upload custom assets to use alongside Inkarnate art, opening up new possibilities. Now, this particular one, I want to add that you could do this later in another program like Photoshop, but it is a little bit more streamlined if you're just all doing it in one place. And then of course there is the commercial use, which we'll break down here in a second, because I actually reached out to Inkarnate to get some clarification. So how much does it actually cost? Well, I mentioned $5 or $25. It's actually shockingly cheap for what it's providing you. So you could pay, like I did, for a $5 monthly subscription, because I paid for $5 just to see if it was worth my time. Or you could pay a yearly annual fee of $25, so obviously saving some money on that annual fee. Quite a bit of money. But $25 for a year of map making? Fantastic. Plus, every map that you make while under Pro, you keep. Those are all your maps, and that is especially important when it comes to commercial rights. I reached out to Inkarnate twice over the past year to ask them about commercial rights, and both times the answer was pretty straightforward. The maps you create with a Pro subscription are yours and can be used commercially. You retain the rights to the map even after your subscription ends, as long as you exported it before then. Once your Pro subscription ends, you won't be able to open or edit your Pro maps, but you can still download them. Now, this should go without saying, but for clarification, you cannot use someone else's map and say that it is yours. So, in conclusion, is Inkarnate worth it? Well, honestly, I think yes, it is worth it, especially with the variety that you can take to do things with this, whether you want it, use it as a guide, or you want to make actual commercially viable maps. Whether you're a dungeon master creating a map for your tabletop, or an author who just wants to learn a little bit more about the world that they're creating and put it kind of in a place where you can reference it as you write, or someone who wants to put it in your book as in-book art or make posters or merchandise of it, Inkarnate has the tools available to help you with that. Now, me personally, I will be taking this map that I'm making in Inkarnate, I will finish it in Inkarnate and then take it out, and then throw it in Photoshop and make some changes, adjust it to what I personally want it to be. And that's just to make it a little bit more customized, to make it worth putting in my book. But it's also a perfectly viable map to just throw on there as well. Inkarnate is a versatile tool that's a little bit less intimidating than Photoshop. It's kind of in the middle ground between picking up a notebook and scribbling out your drawings or working in Photoshop and creating your own map. It's just kind of this go-between, this in-between that kind of helps you with some of the more creative processes and lets you just kind of go. I've included the link to Inkarnate below if you want to check it out. But there's one thing that I want to stress here, and I talked about drawing pads. Now this drawing pad right here, this drawing pad, this cost me about $50, or maybe it was about $60. But this is considered essentially an entry-level drawing pad. You don't have to get one of these drawing pads to make it work. Now, yeah, you do have to get used to essentially drawing while doing this, which the funny thing about this is while I'm recording this, my mouse is moving all over the screen. But essentially, you will get used to it. You'll get used to using these drawing pads, and they start as low as $35. I've linked two down below that I really like, two that I've actually personally used. One was a bit smaller, and that's what I started with because I wasn't sure that I would get it. And then I upgraded to this one to get a bit more surface space. Take a look at them. If you like them, go ahead and grab one. These, I think, are a great way to enhance your experience with Inkarnate. But like I said at the outset, you could also just grab an artist, a freelance artist, and get them to make the map for you. You can scribble out your ideas too, and just kind of use them as reference. It is a very helpful thing to me though. I think this is a very important part when you're creating a world, is to have some kind of visual representation. If you're anything like me, having a visual representation that you can actually see in front of you instead of just in your head helps keep it consistent. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mark, and I actually just released my third book, and you can see it right down below. So if you're interested in Game of Thrones, if they didn't have dragons, but you added in muskets, take a look at that book down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy Inkarnate however you want to use it. Have a good one.